I mean, there's people who are film photographers. We are already sort of a niche, right? Within like the photographic, interest, bubble. So if you shoot film, you're kind of into it. You kind of know other people who shoot film. And from the beginning, I knew that was like a power we had to harness,
Hey, this is Epicenter NYC. We connect our communities to news, information, and each other. I'm your host, Amber Castillo. Kyle Depew's journey into the heart of film photography began long before he opened Brooklyn Film Camera in 2015. With a background working for the Impossible Project, which famously acquired the last Polaroid factory, Kyle leveraged his experience and passion to create a space dedicated to the preservation and celebration of film photography. From a modest stall at the Brooklyn Flea Market to a sprawling 2-level store in Williamsburg, Brooklyn Film Camera has become a cornerstone for both the local and global photo community, offering a rare blend of vintage camera repair, film sales, and community events. Today, journalist Hari Adivarekar talks to Kyle to learn more about how he maintains a small business in a niche market, the challenges and triumphs of fostering a photo community in the digital age, and the personal stories of dedication and creativity that fuel Brooklyn Film Camera.
Yeah, my name's Kyle Depew. I'm the founder of Brooklyn Film Camera, which is where we sit. And I do a lot of stuff here. It's hard to even encompass it, but general management and like direction of the project, I guess would be a succinct way of putting it.
Could you tell me a little bit about the history of Brooklyn Film Camera? So who were the people who had the idea? When was it first kind of verbalized? And then, what were the kind of chain of events that led to the actual opening of it?
So back in 2011, I was working for a company called the Impossible Project. And they bought the very last Polaroid factory in the world and quite literally saved the medium of Polaroid, which is kind of nuts. Wow. There's a longer story there, but in 2008, Polaroid, the sort of mega corporation that we think of when we think of Polaroid, went out of business. They were in like death throes for years. And 2008 was the last year that they were in that state. So they liquidated all assets as a part of their bankruptcy, and that included the name Polaroid, which was bought by a Chinese licensing firm, and that included the very last Polaroid factory, which is in the Netherlands. Kind of two like scheming entrepreneurs got together and raised some money to buy that factory. And you could do a whole other podcast on this, but they bought the factory for the cost of the building and got all the machinery essentially for free, because Polaroid wasn't, it would be the most ridiculous thing in the world to try to remake Polaroid film. They assumed no one would do that. So they sold the building and they got this machinery for, less than pennies on the dollar for the cost of what it would actually be to acquire this machinery. So anyway, I worked for them for 4 years from 2011 to 2015. And I was doing some camera repair and mostly like artist management and just kind of learning the business of Polaroid and how to sell Polaroid and how to work with Polaroid cameras. And it was a wild time to be involved in that project because it was very much a startup. And Julian, who, sits behind me here repairing cameras, and he was working with me then too. So he and I have been doing this together for, 13 years now, which is pretty nuts. But yeah, all the while when I was there, I was fantasizing about something like Brooklyn Film Camera. Because at Impossible, we were, for obvious reason, we were just Polaroid focused. And I liked that. And Polaroid was always my favorite medium. But I thought, geez, there's a space for something broader than this, where it's just all film photography. And that's where Brooklyn Film Camera came to be. So I left the Impossible Project to start Brooklyn Film Camera. And it was a really modest beginning. I mean, I had $25,000 to start it with, which I made by coming back to work at the Impossible Project, because I had actually left. And then I came back to do this 5-month US road trip with them, and they paid me $5,000 a month. I ended up just saving like literally $25,000 exactly
to start this.
And I came back and went, okay, I'm gonna roll the dice with this $25,000 that I have now. That's when I was really like, I'm gonna do this, because I left and I was just working as a bartender again, and the money was good, but I hated it. And I thought, I'm gonna try this Brooklyn Film Camera idea. And so I did. And it started very small. It was at the flea market. So we got a lot of organic exposure as a good means of like springboarding the business into existence. And we also did pretty well there too. We we weren't getting rich by any means, but we were doing all right.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like this interesting litmus test where I went, okay, New York wants this. There's a demand for this. And after doing that for 2 years, we got a small studio. That was the first time BFC had like a dedicated space that wasn't a weird part of my basement. And that was pretty cool. And we then had our first paid for studio in Bushwick. It was a 3rd floor loft. Story you'd expect from there. We had a really tiny one, and then we got a bigger one, and then we got a second one, and then we opened a film lab, and we got a 3rd one, and then we sold that film lab, and it was a whole crazy situation.
So you're moving from place to place, getting bigger and bigger.
Yes. Yeah, kind of slow organic growth. And then a year and a half ago, we moved here. And so this is like, as I see it, the final form. I don't want BFC to get any bigger than this. I just want to streamline, get more efficient, and get our online presence moving a little bit bigger. But yeah.
I love that. I love the lore. I want a little lore about you. Now, you said you started when you were very young. You said you got into Polaroid. How did you first come across like cameras, photography? When did you know that this was something that was going to be a part of your life, and how did that kind of push you towards? Because that's really specific. You're still working with Polaroid.
Yeah.
You started your whole like photographic journey with Polaroid. So tell me about that continuum a little bit. How it started on.
I guess I got into image making by means of my parents having a VHS camera when I was a kid. And when I was a really young teenager, it was probably like, I don't know, like maybe even like 11 or 12, I remember being fascinated with it. I'd make a lot of stop motion stuff with my friends or just like weird videos where we were just being silly or like pretending to be like G.I. Joes or something, Ninja Turtles. But yeah, it was always like really potent to me, like the ability to create imagery and then watch it back. Like something about that was really moving to me as a kid. And it still is, quite frankly. I mean, that's the reason I'm still a photographer, is that there's power in that. But I can remember feeling that really strongly when I was young.
Okay, so what were the initial challenges of starting a small business, specifically in New York City? Because I know there's a whole other set of challenges that are inherent.
I mean, the biggest challenge to me has been the finances, like quite frankly, which is like very maybe obvious.
And that was right right from the beginning as well?
Yeah, it was always financially tough. It was never a business that was making a lot of money. Used camera sales simply have small margins, right? So our average margin, when you average it all out, is, believe it or not, only about 32%. So if we sell something for $100, we profit about $32 on average. And there's some exceptions to that. But it's always been a business that's been difficult for that reason. Traditional retail is 100% markup. So if you buy something for $100, we paid $50 for it, and so you can make profit a lot easier in a traditional model. So that's always been a difficult thing.
It's kind of a cheesy question, but also I think it's important to kind of reflect on sometimes. What have your biggest learnings been over the years? Like if you could narrow them down to 3 or 4 or whatever, what do you feel like, wow, these are the things that I'm so glad we learned, and then it's kind of improved our situation exponentially?
It's a great question. Not worrying about the day-to-day, like not getting emotional about the day-to-day stuff. If our sales are really bad in one day, it's really easy to get to focus on that and go, gosh, it's a horrible day. Oh man, are we doing okay? But you really have to look at the big picture. And yeah, the importance of having a good team is like just beyond description. I mean, I can't tell you how big that's been, Also the importance of community. Like we literally wouldn't be a successful business if it weren't for the community things that we do and that we've been doing for years.
Tell me more about that, because I know was it always part of your vision before you like started expanding space, or was it something that came about once you started having more space?
Yeah, no, it was like from the beginning. I mean, there's people who are film photographers. We are already sort of a niche, right? Within like the photographic, interest, bubble. So if you shoot film, you're kind of into it and you kind of know other people who shoot film. And from the beginning, I knew that was like a power we had to harness, And so, yeah, it's been baked in since the beginning. Even before we had a space where anyone could gather, we were hosting these annual gatherings called the New York City Film Photo Gathering. And we still do this every summer. It's in Prospect Park, and literally hundreds of people come. We have outdoor workshops and people fly in from out of state to be there and stuff like that. It's really cool. We have classes and workshops here that we teach. Our backyard is open to the public during all open hours. It's the winter now, so there's not much going on. But in the summer, there's always like a handful of people hanging out in the backyard, talking cameras or doing a photo shoot or just like sitting around, Yeah, but we definitely, that is a big aspect of this project and will continue to be.
Sure. And would you say that it contributes financially, or is it more in indirect thing where you're building a community and then, of course, some people will have needs?
It's hard to put a metric on it. I mean, yeah, I think there's some return on that. We try not to focus too much on like the ROI of like such things. It's more about getting people to be here. Like, just, I don't know, people meeting other people in real life is so viscerally important right now.
Yeah.
And especially in the bubble of an art form that's sort of specific. It's just really great to meet other people who are doing kind of the same stuff as you.
Right.
And you can look at their gear and that you can kind of talk about it. And it's really important, I think, to have like real world space for those kind of things. And that's often really hard to find when you get into like micro communities like this. And it feels good to be the custodian of a space that is for that.
You've mentioned a little bit about the average profit margins that you're looking at and stuff like that. Are there any other, like, even if they're very approximated, any other numbers that you'd like to share just to give us an idea of the scale of what you guys are doing here?
I have no idea how many customers walk through the door, but we repair thousands of cameras per year.
Oh, okay.
Something in the realm of like 3,000.
Oh, wow.
It's quite a bit. And we're sort of like an elaborate recycling program, which is kind of interesting.
That's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah. We take old things that aren't working anymore and we repair them and then cycle them back into the world. And that feels good. So we're repairing cameras for customers directly. So they'll come here and say, this is my dad's camera and it's, I'd like to get it fixed. And we buy non-working cameras and fix them up and then sell them directly. So there's kind of two ways of doing that.
So what does BFC need right now?
Money. I mean, I'm totally serious. This build out has been costly, quite simply. I'm giving you like the unfiltered, interview.
Sure. Thank you.
The build out, a year and a half ago was very costly and there's a long on-ramp to that. And just, I feel like just a few months ago was kind of the threshold where we looked around and went, oh, I think we're kind of done, and it was like a real sigh of relief at that point, honestly. It took, over a year where it just felt like every week it was like, we need a new printer, like we need another laptop, or hey, we need this shelf built out differently, or we need the contractors to come and fix the lights or fix this wall. And we've also scaled up, our team a lot, and there's a cost there. But 2024 is about figuring out the money, which we are. We're quite on track for it. But if you had a genie in a bottle, I'd ask him for some cash.
Right. Tell me a little bit about your work culture. You spoke about your work culture a little bit. Do you have something like specific work culture?
I would classify the culture of Brooklyn Film Camera to be fun. We chit chat a lot and we all care for one another. There's like an investment in each other's lives and in friendship here, which is really cool.
That's nice.
A lot of employees who work here become good friends, and I've always really liked that, that aspect of it.
Working alongside Kyle is Kylie Nelson. Kylie is an expert on Polaroid aesthetic restoration. In between cutting a piece of leather to paste on a foldable camera, she shared some thoughts about why stores like BFC exist in New York City.
My name is Kylie Nelson, and I am one of the 2 aesthetic technicians at Brooklyn Film Camera.
Okay, so tell me very, very briefly what an aesthetic technician does.
I work alongside my coworker, Carlos. We both work with the Polaroid SX70 cameras. So anytime a customer brings in a camera, we are the ones that intake your camera. We kind of diagnose issues. We hand that off to Julian, who is our lead technician. He's the one who repairs the internal problems of the camera, hands them back to us. We're the ones who kind of are the quality control kind of service. So we do the final testing. We also handle all of the leather and kind of just aesthetic purposes of the camera. So we put new leather on. We give it a deep CLA. We make sure that everything is functioning properly. And then, hand it back to the customers. And we also create cameras to sell in store too.
Why are spaces like BFC important for the culture of New York City and the culture of Brooklyn?
That's a great question. I would say, especially living in New York, where it is such a creative city and photography is blooming everywhere, it helps kind of repurpose things of that nature, of just bringing back old school ways of photography. And I think that's really important. Within New York, there's so many different types of film labs, dark rooms, things where you can really get down and dirty to the nitty gritty of just the sole purpose of film photography. And in so many other cities and places all over the world, you don't have access to that. And I had an SX70, got it a few years ago before I even moved to New York, and I knew a Brooklyn Film camera. And so Julianne restored my camera. That's kind of how I got more involved with it. And then I learned so much more about this camera and just getting more involved in the photography community out here. So it's places like these where you can really get to know people, like-minded people, just kind of learn and explore and just connect with other people who have the same ideas and aspirations as you.
The beating heart of BFC is their photo community, something that was baked into the business from the very beginning. Matt Cosby, a freelance photographer from Massachusetts, recently visited the store for the very first time, but he'd been following them on Instagram for over a year, along with 90,000 others.
My name is Matt Cosby, and I'm a freelance photographer from Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. So do you know about Brooklyn Film Camera before you came here and decided to visit?
Instagram friends.
Oh, interesting.
I've been following them on Instagram for probably over a year now.
Okay. And so this is your first time here in person?
Yes.
So how does it feel? Like, how does it translate from, having known them in some ways, Instagram and then?
It's translating quite well. I'm just excited to be here. I'm with my wife and our other photo friend. She lives in California. We're here for a show just at Union Pool. So we actually booked our hotel kind of close to here so we can stop by and check it out in person.
Okay.
I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah. And first, I'm assuming you feel like stores like this are important.
Yeah.
But why is that? Why are stores like this really important?
I think it's important to have because, I try not to use Amazon. And I think it's important to keep photography alive in all forms, digital and film. But I know film's coming, it's made a resurgence. And so the fact that I did forget film here, I forgot film at home. So not only did I want to come check stuff out, there's a beautiful heap of film. And I think that's cool.
In addition to their film sales and camera repair services, the BFC community can also take part in a variety of events where you can meet fellow photographers and learn something new. To find out more about their gatherings or Brooklyn Film Camera in general, visit their website at brooklynfilmcamera.com/. You can find the link in our show notes. That's all for today. Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting us as we do our best to support our community. We couldn't do it without you. For more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at epicenter-nyc.com. Our intro music is All the Pretty Horses by Karavika. You can find more of their music on their website linked to in our podcast description.